Small changes by Digits 27, Chapter 6. Same old arguments. Sasuke crouched low on the branch he occupied, ears strained for even the faintest hints of a sound from any direction. His darkened clothing helped him bend somewhat into the shadows, and he was counting on that to not immediately get caught. Higher up from his position, Sakura stood and waited, back pressed up against the tree as she hoped her elevated position would make up for her dress lack of camouflage. Below them on the ground, Ame had taken up a strong and resolute stance, her sword firmly in hand as her eyes darted about swiftly. Her more vibrant red dress was much more noticeable in their woodland surroundings, but then again, that was the point. She was bait. Sasuke wasn't sure what to make of the startling turnabout Ame had made over the past few months, both in training and on missions. She was a lot more confident, although shameless would almost have been a better way to describe her. Similarly, her skill with the sword had certainly picked up, enough that Sasuke was wary of going toe to toe with her without some kind of weapon of his own. He appreciated at least that the dead last of the year was no longer hindering the team. Even if he was disgruntled, she was able to seemingly catch up so fast. Then again, he could say the same of Sakura. The girl had become highly proficient in genjutsu, as far as gaining could be at least. Naruto had obviously done a good job with whatever deal he bartered with Kakashi to get the insufferable lazy man to train them even a little. The fruits of the deal also sparkled in the virtually red eyes, slowly spinning in Sasuke's sockets. A few months back, shortly after the invasion, Naruto had finally dug deep and decided that Sasuke needed his Sharingan. It was almost getting to the point of worry. Most Uchiha had already displayed the trait by then, if they were going to have it at all. He had staged a small ambush while on a fairly routine delivery mission that had pressed Sasuke right up to the very edge of his abilities, and maybe even beyond. Apparently, the redhead had simply given Kakashi, as the word on Sharingan in the village now, the go-ahead to do whatever the tall and chronically tardy man thought necessary. Necessary turned out to leave Sasuke badly scratched up with something short of psychological trauma. He didn't like to speak of it much. Either way, it was a good thing Sakura had begun to also get light training at the hospital, or he would have been in a lot of pain the rest of that day. In all, Team 7 was beginning to earn a reputation as a reliable and powerful group of young genin. Between the budding sword mistress, the useful support illusionist, and the prodigal Uchiha, there weren't many situations they couldn't handle. If there were, well, there was Naruto for those instances. However, in general, the young Namikaze tended to be fairly hands-off in their missions, allowing his team to make decisions and choices for themselves. It may have been a bit cold, like throwing a child in the deep end of a pond to teach them to swim, but it showed in their development. Right now, Sasuke was glad for every ounce of training drilled into his body as the team faced off against their most willing and dangerous opponent to date. Ah, haha, tag! A joyous voice called out, followed by the sounds of Ame cursing as a grayish streak suddenly flashed across her position, slapping her on the back quickly before dashing off again. Sasuke smirked, seeing his plan coming together flawlessly as the silver streak rushed in exactly the direction he was counting on, all the way up to aha! Double tag! Suddenly the streak passed behind a tree and vanished moments later, and Sasuke was slightly tapped on the back. The surprise was nearly enough to cause him to fall off the branch, but he caught himself at the last moment. He used his forward momentum and the light application of chakra to his feet to spin himself beneath the thick bough before launching off in pursuit of the gray blur. As he hit the ground in a roll, his arm flashed out towards Ame. Protect Sakura. If it gets her too, we're all finished. And without even breaking his momentum, Sasuke pushed off the ground and pursued his target. Sharingan eyes span rapidly, darting about at every minute detail that could told him where his fleeing target had gone. While it may have been fast, it certainly wasn't subtle and small. Normally, in innocuous clues it left in the form of bent grass or disturbed twigs were like glaring signs for his sojutsu to pick up. Sure enough, he managed to catch what was normally be nothing more than a barely visible streak of silver dash across his vision. However, under his Dojutsu's predictively enhancing gaze, it was slowed down and resolved to the point that he was able to view it. "Can't catch me, Sasuke!" came the giggling and taunting voice, always haunting him as he sped after it. It was faster than him, but only in short bursts of 50 meters at most. In the enclosed environment of the forest, with the trees blocking any straight paths more than a few meters in any direction, he held the advantage. His superior stamina and patience were his greatest assets, and "Ha ha! Tagged you again!" the flying silver streak called out as it landed on his back, only to flip off a moment later as Sasuke whirled around to grab it. Why, oh why, had Naruto seen fit to teach the thing how to properly utilize its chakra? A strange noise that successfully conveyed his frustration ripped from his throat as he took off in a mad dash. This time though, he took to the trees, thankful that it couldn't use the chakra climbing technique. Kami saved them all when it could. Just as he felt as though he were about to corner it, though, Ami made her appearance, causing both Sasuke and it to widen their eyes. "No, I said protect, Sakura!" the dark-haired Uchiha called out in futility as his Sharingan eyes were able to capture in perfect detail as it suddenly diverted course. The impossible fast streak practically bounced off tree trunks using its momentum instead of any formal techniques to ascend to the canopy. Sakura's eyes could only widen in surprise as she saw the gray blur suddenly go straight for her. It was only moments away from tagging her on the head when suddenly a second army seemed to appear from nowhere, clinging to the trunk above the pinkette's head as both girls smirked simultaneously. "Gotcha!" Ame called out as Sasuke's previous frustration turned into pure satisfaction as he was able to watch its expression change to one of surprise and then fear in blissful slow motion. His Sharingan saved every moment like a video to be played back. The silvery blur was tackled out of the air, and everything was brought to a stop as Ame wrestled with it momentarily on the ground. "Ah, bad, Nichan, bad!" Haya's voice proclaimed amidst Ame's struggling grunts, the dust settling enough to reveal the little girl held firmly in Ame's grip, squirming and writhing with everything she had to be free. If Ame hadn't been holding her sword across the girl's chest, blunt side of course, she would likely had escaped by now. Sasuke knew from experience. A moment later, though, and Haya finally went still, the typical huffy expression of a child denied their fun on her pouting features as the young girl crossed her arms over her chest. "Hey, how come Haya-chan calls Ami Ni-chan and not me?" Sakura asked as she descended from the treetop, her own pout and pleased as both Ame and Haya looked up at the girl owlishly, nobody really expecting the question. "That, Sakura," came Naruto's mirth-filled voice as the older teen suddenly flashed into the clearing, "is because Ame is around the house almost every day." The redhead sent an amused look the Violet's way, only to have Ame stare right back unashamedly. Naruto could only sigh at his waylaid pupil. "Yeah, Uncle's got her claws in you deep. Where did my bashful little student go that could only just lift her sword?" Naruto sighed wishfully in an exaggerated manner, at least until the melancholic effect was ruined by Haya suddenly dashing out of Ame's grip and scrambling up his back to proudly sit on his shoulders. He chuckled as she grabbed two of his long red spikes, using them like handlers to stay up and almost giving Naruto the appearance of having horns. "Ah, in any case, good job, you guys. It only took you 22 minutes to catch her this time. I think that's a new record." He nodded at each of them in turn, getting happy expressions from his two little Konoichi and a huff from Sasuke. "She's worse than Tora," the dark-haired Uchiha mumbled under his breath, only to be ignored by their sensing. "That was an excellent strategy. Great genjutsu work hiding Ame like that, Sakura. I see you got over the little problem you were having with Haya-chan then?" Naruto asked, looking towards his aspiring medic. The pinkette gave the excited nod in response. The problem she had been having with people like Haya was that some genjutsus just didn't work on her. The little girl's mind just seemed to work faster than everybody else's, which meant her perception of the world was different to others. Only Naruto could really understand, but even his hyperspeed awareness wasn't permanent. When Sakura tried to place the girl under an illusion, even as ill-developed as Haya's skills were, which Naruto was rectifying, she could instantly tell the difference. It was because Sakura only had her own perception as reference. It was the same reason most Sharingan and Byakugan users were similarly immune. People just couldn't understand what they saw. However, if Sakura were to place an illusion on an area instead of directly on an opponent, then it didn't matter what they were seeing or how fast. It would affect everybody equally. Of course, the jutsu users could still see the chakra in the illusion, but enough finesse could alleviate that over time. Good teamwork in general too. Sasuke, you seem to be taking to a leadership role rather well. Naruto continued to praise before smirking subtly. However, you guys still could have done better. Your plan was a little too rigid as you were almost unable to attempt when Haya decided to change direction on a whim. The redhead looked up at the silver-haired girl on his shoulders, who could only blush and giggle innocently. To Sasuke, it was like watching the devil clothe itself in cheap skin, and all the cuteness wouldn't dissuade him. She was evil incarnate. To be fair though, Haya had come a long way from the ragged and frail little girl Naruto had pulled out of Orochimaru's base. She had filled out, gained a much healthier weight, while her inherent speed and predisposition towards energetic movements kept her from becoming chubby. Her hair had gained the natural luster it had lost in captivity, becoming a shiny, near metallic silver that she had insisted on keeping short in a boyish pixie cut despite Sakura's protest that she could look much cuter with long hair. From what Naruto had managed to get out of her over the past months, the hair color was a common trait in the clan, so much so that she had nearly had a fit upon seeing Kakashi in the street. That was the part Naruto was happiest about concerning the girl. She had really opened up to him and Anko, and by proximity Ame, and had pretty much accepted them as a second family. She didn't seem to have very clear memories of her parents, especially her father, and Naruto felt almost honored to take up a similar role for the girl. Yet at the same time, he felt a pang in his chest every time he was reminded it could only be temporary until her real family was located. He had set Jiraiya to the task of listening out for any signs of a silver-haired clan of speedsters. The man had seemed quite interested in the challenge and had said he'd do it as a favor. It felt as though Naruto had been doing a lot of things for favors lately, as people were quick to gain the future support from their next possible Hokage. It was irritating and certainly not helping him making his decision regarding the matter. Uncle, on the other hand, turned out to be rather blase about it, not particularly caring one way or another. However, he suspected she had an opinion and just wasn't sharing so as not to put pressure on him, which he appreciated. She seemed to grow incredulously nervous as the tuning exams drew closer. Speaking of which, well, I can only really say I'm proud of you guys and how far you've come from the inexperienced brats I picked up almost a year ago now. It certainly didn't feel that long. Really, the time had flown by, but I'm guessing you three have realized what I'm going to say already. He gave a pointed look at Sasuke, only for the Uchiha to finally take his half-hearted glare off of Haya and smirk at him. The Chunin exams are in a week. Sasuke intoned as emotionally as he could, but failed to completely suppress his excitement. Yes, they are, Naruto exclaimed as he clapped his hands together, and you will all be most happy to know that. He paused for dramatic effect as Haya suddenly started doing a drum roll on his head. I have entered you all. We leave in 2 days for Takegakure. He shouted happily, raising his arms to both sides as his genin grinned or smirked to themselves. I know you guys'll do yourselves proud, and remember that I expect you all to make it to Chunin. He finished, placing his hands on his hips as Haya imitated the position from atop his shoulders. You really believe in us that much, Sensei? Ame asked with some trepidation, showing a lot more hesitation than he had seen since Anko had somehow managed to corrupt her. Naruto simply beamed at her. Haya once again somehow managed to copy the expression without even looking. Of course I do. You guys are my team after all. He started only to quickly amend himself with a more sheepish expression. Plus, I have a rather large bet on you guys with the other sensei to pretty much curb stomp the other gaining teams from Konoha. Just as his team were ready to let out indignant noises at being used like that, he gave a cocky grin and waved casually. Team training tomorrow, normal time. Noyo the Great. See ya then. Bye. and with that he disappeared in a flash of red, leaving a silent training ground behind him. Sometimes Naruto sensei can really be annoying, Sakura sighed irritably, just as she had begun to feel a fluttering of pride in having a sensei like the redhead that cared he had to go and ruin it with a statement like that. Ame just nervously chuckled to one side. I suppose it's a form of flattery, she tried unconvincingly, only to have her two teammates look at her oddly, a sly smile appearing on Sakura's features. So, you're around Naruto Sensei's house every day, huh? The pinkette pried, only for Ame's to score her features almost professionally. I have no idea what you're talking about. Uncle Shishoi just likes to have me nearby so she can train me when she feels like it, she defended, only to have a stern outer layer she had been working on to mimic her Mercury second sensei ruined by the faint blush she sported. Sasuke simply grunted as the three began making their way out of the training ground together. It was a massive leap from how they had been almost a year ago. Back then, they would have all gone their separate ways without a thought. I still dislike how you get a second mentor, he admitted, containing his actual jealousy well. However, the thought was shot down equally quickly enough as Ame scratched the back of her head bashfully. Well, it isn't really like that. Uncle Shishiro doesn't really train me, as she even admitted to being less powerful than Naruto sensei, but she does teach me how to be, in her own words, more like a badass kunoichi that can go out and kick it. Her teammates snorted simultaneously from their thankfully short and periodic experience with Naruto's girlfriend. They could have believed that she'd say something like that. What does that even mean? Sakura asked incredulously. She still had trouble connecting the image of her usually playful and cheeky sensei with his crazier and shameless girlfriend. There's a lot of training to make me more flexible, and she tries to make me at least act more confident by throwing me into these really weird situations. I admitted with a shrug, only to have both her teammates stare at her for a long few seconds until her cheeks were threatening to fill with blood again. She was not admitting that her uncle had stripped her to her underwear and practically thrown her into the male changing area of the hot springs, claiming to have misplaced her clothing. Oh, Ami quickly continued, hoping to divert their minds from it. She also has me learning to throw things other than kunai and shuriken. She looked up thoughtfully, although for some reason she has to do it in the weirdest ways, like teaching me how to throw senbon by making me practice with dango skewers. She sighed slightly as the sticks were often still wet when she was forced to use them. And she always insists I make stupid pictures with them for some reason, she grumbled half incredulously. It was like the woman was trying to mold her in her own image. Sounds interesting. Sakura tried hesitantly, unaware what to make of the strange training her female teammate had been getting on the side. Its unusefulness was questionable at best. However, that seemed to spark something in the Violet as she suddenly looked up as if remembering something important. Oh, right! She's also teaching me seduction techniques, she exclaimed, only to realize 5 seconds later, after an equally long and awkward silence, that she had practically shouted the last part far too enthusiastically. Both her teammates were gawking at her, although Sasuke was doing his best to act nonplussed. I mean, general Kunoichi skills and such, she muttered with a slightly more tact than before. However, Sakura was gawking for a different reason, her eyes wide as the glance at Sasuke went missed by no one. I could have been learning how to seduce people this whole time, she whispered to herself disbelievingly. If Sasuke heard, he didn't react, no matter how disturbed he might have appeared. Ame just chuckled nervously as the team descended into awkward silence for a long minute. So, is it just me, or is Haya getting faster? Ame tried hesitantly, only to be blanked by her teammates as they were lost in their own equally disturbing thoughts. She sighed uselessly. Now Uncle was even starting to affect her social life. I can't believe you could be gone for a whole month, Uncle whined for what felt like the 100th time as Naruto pulled on his boot-like sandals. The 2 days had passed without much fanfare, and soon enough the day Team 7 and the other Konoha genin would be making their way to Takagakure for the tuning exams had arrived. Obviously, Uncle was none too pleased about this, and had even roped Haya into sitting on her shoulders to give the most adorable pout Naruto could imagine seeing. I've been gone longer on Ambu missions before, Naruto replied without much feeling. It felt as though they had been going back and forth on this point for hours now. Yeah, but you know, they're really important, and Uncle paused as she saw Naruto turning to give her a raised brow look, instantly fumbling over her words as her hands clenched and unclenched. You know, that's not what I mean. Your squad is important, I know. Naruto maintained the look for a moment longer before nodding in satisfaction and turning to finish stripping his sandal on. You know, I'm only a flash away, he casually retorted, absently throwing one of his tri-pronged kunai over his shoulder for her to catch. However, Anko just looked at it distantly for a while before setting it on a nearby surface. Great, I get the mail order boyfriend package. She sighed to herself as Haya looked confusingly between the two young adults. The small girl didn't really understand what was going on beyond that Naruto would be gone for a while. The violet sighed more irritably after a moment's thought. Nah, I know those kids'll get through to the third round, so they'll need all the training with you they can. I won't take that away from them just to be selfish. She looked up pointedly at the redhead for a few moments. You know, I really want to be selfish, right? She stressed only for Naruto to nod absently again, irritating Uncle further. It passed though, as her moods were wont to do, and suddenly she was bashful, pawing at the hem of her shirt as she struggled with her words. It's just, you know, I finally got you back from Ambu. Then this last year, all we got to do now they might go, and she was forced to trail off as her chin was nudged up gently, so her eyes a good lock with Naruto's. She could practically see the mirth glittering in her violet irises. Uncle, he startled softly, getting her to nod almost robotically. You're rambling. That seemed to snap her out of it at least. However, Naruto didn't let her get a word in as he leaned back out, looking over her appraisingly. You know, you've been acting strange for a while now, wanting to talk about it while I'm still here. Uncle's mouth opened for a moment, words failing to escape her before a blush of indignation marred her cheeks. Fine, you know what I want to talk about? That while I'm still here, thing you've got going on. She marked in a bad redemption of Naruto's lower voice. How long will you be here, huh? It feels like I only just got you back from Ambu, all those dangerous missions where I had no idea whether or not you would come back alive. This last year has been so great. I hadn't had to worry about you or your team. We've spent so much more time together. We even found a member of your actual family, even if she is an annoying brat that won't admit it and swears like a sailor. Uncle had to take a few calming breaths after her short rant, but that didn't mean she was finished. Now you're getting are going to be promoted because you had to train them so damn well. She fumed at getting an incredulous look from Naruto. They'll go off and be tuning. They'll be unsaddled, and then you'll go off too, doing your dangerous Jonin missions. Don't think I don't listen when the Hokage and you talk. Your S rank, I accepted that a while ago, but what am I supposed to do when you're out there facing missions that would normally take entire squads of Ambu? Surprisingly, her voice hadn't raised all that much, mostly for highest benefit, who still looked confused, but with Uncle she didn't need to. She simply put more intent behind her words. Uncle, we're shinobi. It's in the job description to put ourselves in danger. We both made the decision when we were younger. Now we have to own it, Naruto finally replied with a sigh. You wouldn't have to if you were Hokage, Uncle blurted out, only to widen her eyes immediately and immediately clasped her mouth shut as though she could somehow force the words back in. Naruto's eyes immediately narrowing as they came to crux of the matter finally. So that's what this is all about, he said slowly, weighing up the way Uncle's eyes nervously dropped down and the way her finger wound the fabric of her shirt. Finally, though, the teen seemed to accept the fact that she had said what she had said, and it was out in the open now. Her eyes regained the fire that made her so attractive to Naruto in the first place, and she reasserted herself, losing the nervous tics as she puffed her chest out. Damn right it is, she shot at him, making sure their eyes stayed connected like there was an invisible wire between them. So you do have an opinion? Naruto half asked, already knowing the answer, aside from the fact that Uncle always had an opinion, even if it was only facetious. Of course I do, you idiot, Uncle shouted, finally putting her hands up on her head to pull on her head like it was the most obvious thing in the world, only to realize Haya was still there. Haya-chan, could you do me a favor real quick? The little girl looked down, comically dropping over Uncle's head like a limp hat to look into her Oni-chan's eyes. She still seemed rather confused by what was going on, but she was eager to help out the people she now saw as family. Okay, Ni-chan, she answered hesitantly, all the raised voices had been making her a little uncomfortable anyway. Okay, good. Run to Ame and play with her for a while, would you? Uncle asked with the best fake smile she could strain onto her face, which for a 7-year-old was indistinguishable from the real thing. Haya quickly nodded before scrambling down off her shoulders and flashing from the house. Leaving the arguing couple alone gratefully, there was a moment of awkward silence before Naruto finally spoke up. So, you think I should take the position? Again, he only half-assed it, already knowing Uncle's answer, but wanting to get the ball rolling. Well, I know you. That is to say, Uncle struggled before reforming her features and glaring at the redhead. Yes, I do, she finally admitted, letting out a relieved sigh afterwards as a small weight was lifted from her shoulders. I mean, you'd be safer, right? The Hokage just runs the village, no need for dangerous missions or life-threatening situations, Uncle said hopefully. At least Naruto could see she was coming from a good place with this. Uncle, Naruto groaned out in frustration, running a hand through his hair. He needed to be with his team in a few minutes. 1 out of 4 isn't exactly a great track record for living into a ripe old age, you know. Upon Uncle's look of confusion, he sighed again and elaborated. The Sandaime was made Hokage when he was 21, admittedly not that much older than me, and actually younger than Tao-san was. He's now 68. Do you really think he's just been sitting around doing paperwork for 47 years? Uncle looked ready to answer, but he cut her off with a quick shake of his head. He didn't have time. No, he's fought through 2 more shinobi wars, survived multiple assassination attempts, and from what I heard, was on the front lines during the QB attack. Just because the old man is content to let the younger generation do the strenuous work now, doesn't mean it wasn't once his job too. Nato explained quickly, not quite believing he was having to explain this to Uncle, now of all times. Uncle, the Hokage's job is dangerous, and not just for the Hokage. He gave a pointed look at his girlfriend, only to get a blank one in return. She obviously didn't understand still. Look, he started, his eyes glancing towards a nearby picture of him and his parents when he was 4. I told you that when I was just a toddler there was an attempt on my life from Kumo that Tao-san stopped, right? Uncle nodded slowly, the first sparks of realization beginning to enter her eyes. If I become Hokage, then it wouldn't just be me in danger, okay? How long would it be before people began coming after you, or Haya, or even the children we might have someday? Uncle's cheeks flared a cheery red at the thought, but she at least seemed to understand his point. I just thought, she tried, only to lose her steam and let her arms drop defeatedly by her sides. Naruto's features softened at the sight, and he managed the gentle, if not slightly strained, smile, moving forward to draw his girlfriend into a hug. I know, but you have to remember that the Hokage isn't just the village's leader. They are also supposed to be the village's strongest shinobi. Uncle leaned into the embrace, managing a bemused smile as she rested her head in the crook of his neck. You're so humble, she muttered in a poor attempt at humor. It still got Naruto to chuckle softly, though. I'm just saying, he replied quietly, rather enjoying the peaceful moment. I get it now. Sorry for bringing it up, Uncle managed awkwardly as she moved off of Naruto. She was never the best at apologies. The redhead just shrugged as he tried to regain his useful flippant grin. I'm not discounting the possibility. I'm just saying there's a lot for me to think about and asking you to be a little patient, he explained. By now, Uncle seemed to have recovered from her brief sentimental mood and bounced back. Well, can't say patience is my strong suit, but I'll try, she offered up with a compromising shrug. Don't worry, even if I do take the position, you won't be rid of me that easily. Naruto started as he grabbed the kunai from the nearby surface and flipped it up into the air. I'm just a flash away, after all, and he was gone before the small weapon landed in Uncle's hand, making her grin lopsidedly. Show off. End of chapter 26.